With her stellar voice and clear vision, my next guest has formed the career the way she wanted it to be. She traded in the traditional major label system to sign with a fierce indie label, where she became empowered to be completely hands-on in building the musical career she wanted. She hails from a major musical family, but has carved out her own place in the music scene. She calls her music garage country, where her emotions spill out all over the place. But she, as do I, find beauty in that. Welcome to the Living Instead podcast, Aubry Sellers. Hi, Aubry.
Hello. What an intro.
Girl, I mean, royalty deserves an amazing intro, okay? I am so incredibly happy to have you here on the Living Instead podcast. I have been a fan of your music, and I've watched your career ever since I've gotten to Nashville. I moved to Nashville in 2013, and I remember your music and you being signed, I believe, to a label around that time. And just watching your career unfold and being inspired by you, because you were just a young female and I was trying to do the same thing and get to where you were going. And it was just such a thrill to watch you and listen to your music as you put it out. But I want to get to know a little bit more about you. So you come from some pretty amazing musical people in your family, huh?
Yeah. My mom's Leanne Womack, country singer, and my dad is Jason Sellers, who's a songwriter, and he also had a record deal for a while. And when I was growing up, he played with Ricky Skaggs and Ben Skill. And so, I kind of watched their careers blossom and grow as I grew up, which was really cool. And then when my parents got divorced, my mom got remarried to Frank Liddell, who's an incredible producer and owns a publishing company in Nashville called Carnival. And so, everyone in my family does music, and I've been surrounded by it since I was born, literally.
My goodness. Yeah. So I actually come from a family of music too. My mom was a local Texas regional country singer. So in her own right when she was young, but there is that experience from when you're such a young girl. And I can imagine that you had a similar experience. You see your caretakers, your parents doing really, really fun stuff, like going into the studio and writing songs. And that's the world you grow up knowing, right?
Yes, I didn't realize that you grew up that way too. So yes, we can relate. Yeah. It's it's weird because it's kind of like, I mean, I guess a lot of people go into their family business, but ours just happens to be music, but it's we grew up that way, so I don't really know any other way.
Right, right. When you were little, was music, it was definitely always around you and you were surrounded by it, but was it very clear to you that you wanted to do it for your career and for your life?
Not necessarily. I always knew that I was going to do music in some form. I didn't know that was going to for sure be my main career always. I have lots of different interests and I still do. But the only thing that kept me, I think, from doing that was kind of wanting to establish my own identity. I think a lot of people have that when growing up, and I felt a little bit I guess, buried or swallowed by the fact that everyone was so successful at it in my family. And it was kind of scary to pursue it. And also, I wanted something that I had to myself, which growing up was acting for me. So that was kind of my creative outlet that I got to explore and have to myself. But I think it was around age 19 or 20 that I really started writing with the intent of actually recording an album. I had obviously played music and gotten a guitar when I was 13 and all that stuff, and I had written for fun. But that was the time, I think, around when I started thinking, okay, I really want to try to do something with this, and had a little bit of a vision for what I wanted my music to sound like.
So cool. We really do have a lot in common because I moved to LA when I was 16. I begged my parents for like 6 months, but I moved there because I wanted to do acting.
All right.
And I had always played guitar. I had always done the music thing, but I never thought it could be a career. And so I was like, well, I'm seeing these girls like Demi Lovato, Selena Gomez. They're all moving to LA and doing High School Musical and all those things. And I want to do that. That's what I want to do. And moving to LA was lovely and wonderful and awesome. And I was there for 7 years. But I slowly realized music was my calling and it felt better to me. But I do, which you probably do too, still have big dreams of being just kind of an all-over entertainer artist type.
Totally. I think, they're similar in that they're both kind of emotional outlets for me, but the one thing too, I'm an introvert, so acting for me was always a little bit easier as far as being in front of other people because you're behind, a character or whatever. So it was a little bit easier for me to do that. And definitely when I started playing music for other people, like live and as the front woman, it was very challenging for me because I was having to be myself and it felt way more vulnerable to me than being an actor. But yeah, I still have dreams of doing that. I actually just moved back here from LA. I was living there for 3 years, and that was fun. I really enjoyed it, but 2020 had other plans for all of us.
Girl, I feel you there.
And I'm kinda happy to be back. I get to experience the seasons.
That's exactly what I've been telling people because we're always on the move and we're always on the go as musicians. And to actually be here and watch the seasons change, it's been such a blessing.
Yes.
Such a blessing. Well, let's go back to literally what we were just talking about because I have had a very similar experience when I moved from LA to Nashville. I knew I wanted to do music, but I was so used to playing other parts and playing other roles and the story being given to me that I had no idea who I was when I started writing music for myself and what I wanted to sound like. And so I feel like I kind of got caught up in the status quo of, well, sound like this girl because it's working, or sound like this person because it's working. What was your experience there and forming your own sound in the beginnings of your career, of your music career?
Yeah. That is one of the things that I like about music more so than acting is that I have creative control over what I'm writing. I produce and all this other stuff. So it feels like it's very much my project. And instead of, like you said, you're having to be plugged into something else and someone else's vision. So that was what I liked about it. And I think it kind of naturally came together for me from all the different types of music I had listened to. Um, I think the writing process is probably a big part of that. I just took a few years probably to write all the time. And so I think that there was plenty of stuff that I wrote that wasn't anything I would ever record, as I'm sure you've had that experience too, but I think that was a huge part of the process of just finding out who I like to work with, what are the songs that I want to sing and put on my record, and also working with Frank on my first record and my second record, but on my first record especially, I feel like he was able to kind of listen to my songs, listen to all the stuff I love, and help me kind of find the common threads between them all. One thing, for instance, was when I started doing kind of pre production and guitar vocals for my first record. I just went in with like an acoustic guitar and I just didn't like the way it sounded. It just wasn't inspiring to me. And we were like, well, let's try it with electric. And we started playing around with different sounds and all that kind of stuff. And that was kind of the birth, I think, in my head of like, okay, this is what you said earlier, garage country. Like, I'm very inspired by rock music, electric guitar, all that stuff. And so it just kind of organically, I guess, came together through all of those things. And then when it came time to really record the record, I felt pretty sure about what I was doing as far as what I wanted sonically.
Right. Did you ever feel pressure to conform from industry standpoint? Like, I'm sure you met so many amazing industry people very early on just because of your parents and them seeing you grow up and step into this, oh, she's an artist too. Like, that's incredible. Maybe she's going to sound exactly like her father or exactly like her mother. And did people peg you for that? And did you have to really kind of demolish everybody's expectations? Or was it a very natural, nope, I'm doing this, and everybody accepted it?
Well, I'm sure not everybody accepted it, but I was very certain about wanting to do it. Um, and there's just kind of no other way for me as far as I would know I wouldn't be happy, maybe because I grew up around seeing other artists and their careers, knowing that even if I were to do something that might make me more money or be an easier path or whatever, it wouldn't make me happy. So I had that in my head when I was making music and knew that no matter what, even if I'm not going to be that successful, I still want to be doing something that I'm proud of. Um, but yes, as far as expectations, I mean, my dad, he writes, you know, top 10 hits or whatever for country music. And then my mom has had her career, and has been more traditional leaning a lot of the time. And so I think a lot of the older fans and probably her fans expected me to be a little more like that, especially since we're similar vocally. But there's definitely been a couple times I've seen people say things and they're just, more traditionalists who aren't a big fan. But otherwise, I feel like people have been pretty, they've embraced it and have understood that I'm trying to do my own thing.
Right. Right. I know it really is so wild how similar you and your mom sound, but it's almost like if I'm a fan of Leanne Womack, it's almost like oh my gosh, wait, this is the same kind of vocal sound, but the classic rock thing, which I'm a huge classic rock fan, like classic rock, 70s, mellow classic rock, like that whole era. Goodness, I listen to your music and the word that comes to me is cinematic. Like it makes me feel like I'm in a 3-minute movie of my own feels.
Well, being such a movie fan, I love that. Especially when I made this last record, Far From Home, I was listening to a lot of like Quentin Tarantino soundtracks and stuff like that. And I had written some of the music in Marfa, Texas, if you know where that is. It's a super cool like desert artist town, and it's like so inspiring. And so that whole cinematic vibe was kind of in my head when I was making this record. So that's awesome that you thought that.
No, it's like, like in middle school or high school when like we'd be in the back seat, like and our parents were driving us somewhere, but a song's on and we're like looking out the window and we're like, what if I was in a mini music video right now? It's like, that's the feeling your music gives me.
Thank you. That's the highest compliment.
Oh man, if only TikTok were around back then.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So tell me a little bit about your switch from major label to indie. What was your experience at the major, and then what kind of made you shift perspective of, wait, I think I might be better off being on my own and a little bit more independent?
So when I made my first record, I made it independently, and then I ended up signing to a label afterwards. They bought the record. So it was interesting because I kind of did that on purpose because I knew the process of making a record with a label, and I was scared to do that, especially on my first record. I really wanted to, if I could, establish myself and what I'm doing before I went anywhere so that, I had a little bit more security in who I was and felt like they knew who they were signing. Well, I mean, it's like tale as old as time. Major labels do the same thing to everyone, I feel like. And sometimes because of, luck and, you know, hopefully their music is good, obviously, but like a million things can happen, I think, that align and help, make someone's career work when they're doing something a little bit different. Casey Musgraves is an example, or Chris Stapleton, so there's great examples of that working. But I think for a lot of people, it's just it's even if you got the creative freedom you wanted to make, like Far From Home, like I did, they may not know what to do with it, because it's different. They're going to have to come up with basically a whole new way to market it. And that's different from the kind of traditional send it to country radio path that they're used to taking. So yeah, I mean, that was my experience. It was like, made this record, we don't know what to do with it, and I kind of said, look, I can sit here like, a lot of artists do for 5 years trying to do something that will make you feel like this is something you can take to radio or whatever you need. But I said, this is the music I wrote, and I know it's not going to be much different from this, so I decided to leave and put it out independently. And I don't regret that. I feel like I said earlier, it's like, I know this is the music I make. So what else would I do? It's just, I don't want to make something just to make money or have success or whatever. I would love all that stuff, but I really want to do it on my own terms if possible. And maybe it's not possible, but I'm going to keep trying.
Girl, I mean, it with the music you're making, it has to be. I mean, and it really is. The industry has changed even so much in the last 5 to 10 years, especially when I first got to town. It felt like the only path was to conform, get signed, go to radio. And as things started to progress in the social media world and the Spotify streaming world, a lot of doors started to open for indie artists to say, wait a minute, I can do this. I don't have to wait on other people to give me plans and make things happen. I can actually talk to my fans. I don't need a radio middleman, which has been such a blessing and a curse for some artists who don't like to do that kind of stuff. I can see why some artists like being at labels, because it's, they do a lot for you if it's in their terms and they're able to.
Totally.
But it's really so fascinating, and your music is so, frustrates me so much when people say we just can't find a spot for it. It's like, well, there's people listening to it, so there's definitely more people out there like those people listening to it. So
They're not that weird. I know there's more.
Yeah, 7 billion people. There's got to be more people. Even if they're all in Japan, send me to Japan. I don't care.
I really want to go to Japan, actually. So.
Same. Exactly. I know. And there's this whole, I've talked to so many artists, like different artists in different realms. I mean, Mickey Guyton, she's signed. Maggie Rose, she's independent. Levi Hummin, he was signed and then decided to be independent. So I've talked to a lot of artists on this podcast, and it just seems like there's just such this common story of when a label gets involved, things just get more complicated. And that's true, because you're signing your music and giving your music to people who it becomes in their hands now. And it's like, what? How many people did you have like on your label team, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, a lot.
Yeah, like a ton. Like you give it over to like 20 people, 30 people, 40 people to go, and you don't really know what they're doing day in, day out. You just have to trust that they know what they're doing. And it's just a really scary feeling, especially coming from the world, because I've always been an independent artist and I've always had uber extreme control of what I do. Like if that were to ever happen in my career, it would be very scary for me.
I don't think you would like it.
Don't think I would like it either.
Also, another thing that people may not talk about as much, but it's like the pace of things is so much nicer when you're an independent artist because you're in control of it. If you want to put out something tomorrow, you literally can. You know what I mean? So it's like that freedom feels so good. Just like, wait, I can do whatever I want. Don't need anyone's approval. It's so great. So yeah, I mean, when people ask me like, what advice do you have for new artists and stuff like that, I always say like, develop your own sound and don't be afraid to do everything yourself, at least for a little while. You know what I mean? Because it's like you'll learn, first of all, what every part of the business is. And so if you do end up getting a manager, an agent, or all these other things, you're going to understand what their jobs are, and also just because you get that creative freedom, and it's a good feeling to be able to do things the way you want to do them.
Yeah, exactly. That's honestly one of the biggest silver linings of being the independent artist and making all the mistakes, because you have to learn everything. You have to learn what a manager does, what an agent does, what a label does, and learn if that's really what you want. But now I feel like I've made so many mistakes. I've made so many mistakes. Right. It's like I've made so many mistakes that actually has made me more professional, more seasoned, more just better at what I do, right? As an artist. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting world, girl.
It's a learning process.
It really is such a learning process. It is such a learning process. And also asking questions. I feel like I did not ask enough questions when I was first going through everything, because I felt dumb. I felt like, oh, if I ask this, they're going to think that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it's really important. I think that's also a good way to just get a gauge on what other people's philosophies are when you're working with them, is just ask questions. They may perceive it that way, who knows, but I think it's an important thing.
Right. And even if they perceive it that way, now I know that they're not worth your time. You need to question their advice if they look at you and laugh for asking a question. But if they laugh and say, no, I'm just laughing because of this, it's a great question, that's fine. But if they look at you and laugh at you, run in the other direction, because I would just encourage any person who's trying to learn anything, you have to have mentors. You have to have people that you ask questions, even if they seem silly or stupid. And I wish I would have had more mentors in sure. my walk and in my journey. And I love that. Do you feel like your mom and your dad and your stepdad have been mentors for you since day one?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, I feel like more so than them sitting me down and giving me advice, it's just been watching their kind of paths and absorbing that in that way. But even seeing all that and knowing how everything's worked for them, my mom was always on a major label until more recently, until her last few records. So, it's been the way her career is very different than what mine is, so even knowing all that and learning a lot about the business, I still had so much to learn and experience on my own, and still am. it's a lot different when it's you in the driver's seat. And also when it's a totally different era and, we have streaming and most people are in bands now. I feel like that didn't used to be as much of a thing. It was because a lot more people were on major labels. Um, so there's just so many different things with touring and all these other things that are different, that I kind of had to learn for myself. But like you said, I mean, I think another big thing is like for me, being able to talk to other artists who are on a similar path as you or at least level or whatever as you is really nice to be able to relate to people and talk about touring and all these other things and be like, oh yes, that happened to me. Like I'm not the only person who's experiencing this.
Right, right. When we can band together and talk about even just little things. I had a conversation with an artist friend the other day, and she was like, "So, what are you doing for this whole Reels thing?" I'm like, "Girl, I am so fatigued by all of these like social media platforms adding all of these stories, and now Twitter has this thing called fleeting, and I'm just not
They
about
do?
it."
I haven't even heard
they
of
announced
that.
it today, and I'm just like, I can't. I just if one more comes out with something that I have to upload something to, it's going to
Seriously.
get crazy. I'm going to.
Yeah. Everyone's trying to get on that TikTok life.
Oh my gosh.
I
I
had to
know.
delete it because I would not get off, but I just downloaded it again the other day.
Hours will go by. Hours. And I'm like, and it's funny. And I'm like, I guess I'd probably be watching trash TV if I wasn't doing this. So, I mean,
Yeah,
but
I know.
I question if it actually makes me relax or not.
I know. But I just feel like once it learns what you like, the algorithm is too good.
Oh my gosh. My videos consist of cat videos, music videos, Christian videos, and like some like extreme sports skiing something or other.
Mine's cats, like you said, also cats. For some weird reason, like home decor type videos have been popping up a lot. I guess they were like, you like this. Funny, just funny videos. That's probably the bulk. And then book videos is another one that comes up a lot for me. And like Harry Potter. Harry Potter, tons of Harry Potter.
So much Harry Potter. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like just having an artist community. I think even when I first got to town, it seems like everybody, and maybe I just wasn't plugged in the correct way because I didn't know how to ask the questions and I didn't know how to form community, and I wasn't as focused on relationships as I should have been. But it does seem like a lot of artists seem to band together now and want to lift each other up, especially in the female space, with a bunch of, just little things that, seem to you women of country and women coming together and saying, hey, we don't have to be competitive. There's room, there's room for all of us, and we're greater together and greater in numbers. And that idea sounds amazing, but I feel like it takes time for things to shift that way. So I really love seeing women come together. And even just me doing this podcast, I was like, I just want to talk to artists. Like, I just want to know their story. Yeah, so this is my version of doing that, Nice. Yes, and learning from you guys, because there really is everybody, regardless of what you've been through in your path, everybody has a nugget of wisdom to learn. Everyone you come across and have a conversation with, even if you think that they're not intellectual.
Yes, that's what I was just going to say. How do I articulate this in a way that's nice? But even if you didn't think they were very smart, they can still teach you something.
Exactly. And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of human nature. And I think that's what we do as artists. We have to pay attention to those conversations and those feelings and those lessons that we learn, because it funnels into our music. Our personal life is our music life.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's so much bleed. There's no really just not a distinction.
Yes. So let's dive into your music. How do you start with a project? Do you kind of cast the net really wide and write a bunch of stuff and then things start to come together? Or do you go into an album or a project being like, no, it's about this specific thing and all the shades of that?
Yeah. No, for me, it's been, for both my records, it was just writing a ton of songs. And then every time there was one that I felt was really special, it's just like file that one away, and I went into both records having not way more, but more songs than I could put on a record. And just kind of getting in the studio with maybe a list of 20 songs and kind of figuring out what fit together and doing it that way. I do have kind of a vision and have had a vision for both my records as far as what I wanted them to be like sonically going in. So there's that. And then otherwise, I think it just kind of comes together organically as far as what songs I'm choosing. But yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a vision for just sonically what I want it to sound like, which also then kind of translates into visuals for me. And, it all kind of just comes together that way. Um, and yeah, I haven't been writing as much recently, which is weird. You would think with all this time we had this year,
No,
I would
I'm
have
the
written.
same. I'm the same. I've shown up to rights. I've shown up to rights with my collaborators that I write with, all that I wrote, my coming project out. Like, we're amazing together, but I walk in and I give myself the big responsibility, of course, as you should as an artist. Like, I bring the titles, I bring the vibe, I bring I need to come prepared. And I was just empty. I mean, the tank is empty right now.
Totally. I feel like, yeah, it's just a weird time, and we can't like really be out fully living life, which I think is what gives you inspiration to write. Um, and so yeah, I haven't been doing that much this year. I actually went back to school and I'm finishing my degree and doing other things with my time. So
Degree in what, girl?
political science and international relations.
Wait, okay. This is honestly, I have been thinking of possibly going back to school, like doing online school and getting a, cause I don't know, I really love psychology. Like, I love therapy. I love all of that stuff and learning about the human brain. And I was like, I don't know if I'd ever use it, but I got a theater degree and I'm not sure what I can do with that. So I'd like to go back and maybe go to, yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I went to college for theater for 2 weeks and then switched my major.
Okay, I should have been like you.
No, but then I never finished until now. I'm going to finish. But yeah, it's like you said. I mean, I don't know what I'll do with it, but I definitely think a lot of, myself included, musicians probably this year were like, what if something like this happens again? Because, you know, I need to be prepared to do something else, just even if it's temporarily. But also, I love learning, and it's the same thing I started my degree in, and so, it's something I've been interested in forever, and uh and I'm having fun doing it. So yeah, I haven't been writing as much, but being on the road was a huge inspiration for my last record. So we'll see what life brings next year. Maybe there'll be something else inspiring.
Yeah, one of my friends told me I'm in the phase. Incubation phase? Like, it's marinating in there. It just hasn't totally fully come out yet as words and melodies, but it's in the heart. It's in the heart and in the head right now. Oh my goodness. Well, I love that. Okay, well, so give me a little bit of, you've been coming out with stuff in 2020, so there's plenty for y'all to go check out. Y'all listening? Y'all need to go listen to Aubry's music because it's amazing. But give me a little insight, because this is like one of my favorite songs and I've been jamming it so much. Haven't Even Kissed Me Yet. Oh, like the guitars and like literally that takes me, and then like I don't know, it's just got like Worried Mind also. Oh. The way it starts, and like I'm just transported into that 8th grade by the car window, dark, dramatic place for like 15 minutes on the way to be dropped off at middle school. Like,
Yeah.
oh, that Worried Mind song is so good. It's so good. Actually, do Worried Mind, because
Okay.
that's actually the song I want to know.
Okay. No, Worried Mind is I wrote that with Adam Wright, who I wrote a lot on my first record, and he's played on both my records too. That's just a song about anxiety, frankly. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but
No wonder I was attracted to it.
yeah.
All my music. I have so many songs about anxiety.
Yes. So something I struggle with for sure. And especially like I told you earlier, going on the road for the first time and stuff, there's just been different periods in my life where I was very anxious. And so, that was an outlet for me to write music about it. And the song is kind of dark and, like you said, ominous and cinematic. And I think just kind of fits how anxiety can make you feel sometimes. And it's really interesting because I have a lot of people come up to me and, say they relate to that song, especially women. I've even had people's husbands come up and say, my wife loves this song, or I know my wife would love this song. It's funny. Not that men don't experience anxiety, because they do, but I do know that women, apparently by the numbers, experience it more. So it's really interesting to hear people. Well, that's why I write music, is to connect with people. That's the only reason I put it out. So it's really great when you can be playing stuff like that live and have people come up to you and say they connected with it. And that's been though, and Haven't Even Kissed Me Yet is probably those two songs, honestly, the most off this record.
I love that. I love that. I mean, yeah, that's what it's all about. There's no greater feeling than putting something out in the world and getting a DM or someone come up to you at a show being like, I really connected and that changed my entire day, or that changed my entire mind about this, or that infiltrated my heart so deeply. And it's like, oh, that's like crack for me.
Yes, or like, this record got me through a hard time. I'm like, oh.
Oh, yes, keep laying it on. You're making me feel less alone in the world. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. So how do you, other than your music and you channeling your anxiety that way, were there other ways you had to figure out how to get your anxiety under control?
Oh yeah, I mean, therapy, that's a huge help. um, and a lot of it is just, I think, I mean, when I was first when I was first experiencing it, I you know, like, read every book I could find, researched on the internet. Thank God we had the internet, because the internet may have caused our anxiety, but it also helps us find information.
Right. At least it does that.
Yeah. And reading, like I said, therapy. So there's been a lot of things like that. And just, I think, for me, like, I've noticed it really flares up in any kind of transitional period or new, whether a big move or going, leaving my house. I remember for the first time as a 18-year-old, or going on tour for the first time. These periods of my life have probably been the hardest as far as anxiety. So I think now, learning that, coming back from LA and having all this stuff happen this year, I've been having a little bit more than usual, or more, but it's like each time it's a little easier to deal with, because I'm becoming more aware of, okay, it's a lot of change. So this is natural. It keeps you from panicking, I think, a little bit, when you realize that it's just, this is how I respond to stress or change. So yeah, I think all of those things help. And I think another thing is just realizing what is helpful to you specifically. And something I've discovered recently is like anxiety Instagram. Like, there's all these great Instagrams that are really helpful, and they give you something not only to relate to, but sometimes like helpful tips. So seeing that stuff is really good, and I think just helps you feel less alone. And same thing with music, and helps you understand that this is something that a lot of people go through, and you will also get through it.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember my anxiety hit really hard in 2017, and I don't think I really had it until then. Or maybe I did. I think I just didn't really know how to define it. I didn't realize what I was going through. I thought it was just everybody stresses about the future and everybody feels really deep and dark and they have all these places that they go to every single day. It's just a normal human experience. And when I started going to therapy, I realized, oh, that's anxiety. That's
Yeah,
anxiety to the max. And
totally.
and my therapist was like, okay, well, now that we know that you have it, now we can start figuring out what triggers it and what sends you to those places. And it's exactly like you said, logically having the conversation with yourself of, okay, I'm about to enter into this season of change, or I'm about to enter into this, which does trigger my anxiety, and having the logical, almost kind of adult conversation with yourself of just like, hey, let's just brace yourself and just take it day by day, take it slow, and anything you can eliminate from the picture, do it.
Yes, you have to mother yourself. That was a huge thing I discovered, is that I think, and probably a lot of people with anxiety are either perfectionists or have a lot of critical self-talk. And a huge part of improving mine was learning how to literally baby myself in my own brain, because it's so the opposite of how I would deal with myself before. It feels silly at first when you start doing it, but then you realize, like, okay, this is actually really helping. So that helps a lot, just being really supportive of yourself, and being like, it's okay to feel like you feel right now. This is totally normal, blah blah blah. That has been a huge help. Um and that was something I remember a therapist taught me, and I was like, this is really silly, but it's working.
It seems so silly. Yes, I remember being in the mirror and I said something to myself that was one of those, on autopilot, self-critical talks that I needed to break. But in that moment, I remember being like, wow, that is so rude. I would never say that to my friend.
Exactly.
I would never say that to my parents. I would never say that. So why am I saying it to myself? That is loco cuckoo bananas. But it's having that moment of pause to just say, whoa, I need to, like you said, mother myself right now. That this is crazy that I keep talking to myself that way, and that it's not normal, and that you can change it.
Mm-hmm. Like you said, the biggest part is sometimes just becoming aware that you have it, and then that makes you able to pause and pay attention to what you're doing. Because before, it's so automatic that you don't even know what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Oof, girl. There's so much good stuff in this podcast. Okay, so we're going to end the podcast with a rapid fire question. So I'm going to say the first part, and then you're going to complete the sentence. Okay. People are going to get to know you a little bit more. All right. I have seen every episode of
Gilmore Girls. 3 times.
My favorite food or meal is.
I just immediately thought of dumplings. So I love dumplings, like chicken and dumplings.
Mm-hmm. What is your take on the Cracker Barrel chicken and dumplings?
I like them, I mean, it's obviously not like homemade, but it's comforting to me when I'm traveling.
Oh man. Oh, a good Cracker Barrel anything other than Subway. Oh my goodness.
Yes, I literally was just telling someone yesterday, you don't understand how much I hate Subway. It's all they have, especially when you're eating like gas station Subway.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. Oh my gosh. My favorite song ever written is.
That's so hard, but I'm going to say Bittersweet Symphony is a song that I really wish that I'd written. I love that song.
My dream duet partner is. Let's change that. My dream duet partner today is.
Yeah, because I was going to say, it was Steve Earle, but I got to do it already.
Okay, boss move. Yes. Dream completed.
So I would say today, like an artist of another genre, Tame Impala. I love Tame Impala.
My secret songwriting tip is.
Oh, right from your heart. That's literally it.
Love. Each day I get older, I realize
that people who I thought were old are not old, and I still feel like a child inside.
Honestly, can I just get that like tattooed or like on a sign somewhere, because that is so true. Something I would tell my 21-year-old self is.
Everything's going to work out. Don't be stressed.
And then last one, someone wise once told me.
Oh man. I mean, well, I always think about my mom telling me, or really inspiring me to be true to myself. So I think that's been like a theme throughout my life, is just making sure that I'm always checking in with myself and making sure that I'm doing something that's what I want to do and is true to who I am inside. So that's been a huge guiding lesson in my life.
I love that. Well, Aubry, thank you so much for being on the Living Instead podcast today. I really appreciate your heart and you being open and talking about your journey with us.
Thank you so much. Had fun.